The EPC caucus. Continue sharing your time.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. So when it comes to business plan, key strategy 1.5, that's where we left off, Minister, on wellness initiatives. And,
okay, great.
One that we didn't mention that we can talk about at another time that I did mention last week in question period was Get Outdoors Alberta, or GO weekend. Costs nothing. It's a wonderful way for people who perhaps were tempted to hibernate during the winter. No offense meant, but let's face it, it's not as quick, easy, or accessible for people to get outdoors and exercise and do things that are better for their wellness. And you know, it was to be celebrated a couple of weekends ago. It was not commemorated. And a few years ago, we had not only seniors and recreational groups, sports groups, but also schools across Alberta really engaged, and it was a great way to launch things. And I mean, steal the idea, launch whatever programs you have in addition to launching Get Outdoors Weekend. But
sure.
Let's get back to the nutrition program, because that's what we're talking about today. It's related to some of your initiatives launched recently, and Bill 1. And of course, this business plan key strategy 1.5 regarding healthy, successful futures. So a two-part question on the nutrition programs,
Yes.
Minister. How much direction is being provided to school boards in terms of allocating them, the funding that they receive between actual food and nutritional education? And does your ministry work in conjunction with any of the schools of public health at our universities in order to provide the most up-to-date information with the nutrition programs?
Yes,
So,
thanks for that. And those are well-constructed questions. We are trying to cover off a lot of this information. It's new ground here in the province, and it's interesting. I had at the new launch of to the 61 school boards, we had the representatives from the public health school, I believe it's called, if I'm remembering correctly, that are going to do an academic study of this. They're very excited to see how this will affect the emotional and physical well-being and performance of students. So there is a connection with them. Just as an interesting point, we've seen that the initial pilots have been had about a 2% administration cost, so I think that's pretty good. We will be evaluating that over time. All of the nutrition projects must submit a budget. We do have site visits for each pilot, and we have meetings with all participants. And then the selection for the first 14 was based on socioeconomic data. But of course, I decided to now bust it out to pilots in all school jurisdictions. So yeah, we will be monitoring this carefully, but we will still allow the same latitude that we did previously. Because again, you know, I don't want to be prescriptive in choices people are making around food, or the curriculum, or the teaching, or the community partnerships that they might endeavor to explore. You know, I can think of two people that I ran across, and you know, some of the best volunteers you can get are people that just recently retired. And so in these two schools, in these two towns, two women that were just either recently retired, and they just took it on. And one person, her comment stuck in my mind so much. She said, you know, this is the most meaningful thing I've ever done in a school. And she had been a full career teacher, and I think she had a doctorate in education. And, you know, and it kind of, well, I mean, who wants to keep you emotional in politics? But it brought tears to my eyes, because, I mean, I thought, wow, you know, so we can all work together on this. And if people have constructive criticism, I'm very, very open to that. And I think that it should be money well spent, and we can see improved
Great,
outcomes.
because I know some of these school boards are good to go, and like you say, there's some great volunteers. I've met some of those folks. In my experience, I was fortunate. It was well over a decade, and from kindergarten to university, and in all sorts of areas where I had my experience. And yes, it was physical, but it was also emotional, spiritual, cultural, financial, in terms of,
Yes.
of wellness. And some of those groups, though, are looking for some help in terms of how much do we spend on food, how much do we spend on education, and hopefully they've got some direction from your group, but as you mentioned, not being overly prescriptive, and
No,
I'm glad that
I
you've
don't
got
wanna be
schools,
very too
universities involved. Now, let's move on to an unfortunate incident in this realm, and people are now trading their favorite banana bread recipes, if you can.
Yeah.
No, and it actually begs a bigger question. What are you ensuring, how are you ensuring that good intentions in terms of nutrition don't boil over into inappropriate or even unintentional abuses of power? I think as former educators, we can both agree that could have, should have been handled completely differently. And it really comes down to this. How does your ministry intend to balance the desire to implement solid nutritional foundations within our young students with the desire of parents to provide food that they feel is appropriate? And it can go into every realm, Minister. I mean, from like I care so much about the environment as well, but I don't feel it's my job to shove it down people's throats. So when it comes to, again, pardon the pun, but when it comes to nutrition, where is that balance between implementing solid nutritional foundations with our younger students and the desire of parents to provide the food that they feel is either appropriate or what they can afford?
Yes, yeah, and I certainly reflected on this plenty in the last week. I mean, the individual circumstance that took place in Calgary, I guess, was very unfortunate and inappropriate. I think that we have to put things in context, but we also must learn from individual circumstances to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen in our schools. And the key, I think, again, is to not make too many rules around any given endeavor, right? And the food coming to a lunch program or kids bringing food to school, yeah, it's part of that connection. It's a tangible connection between your home and your school, right? And it's not just a salami sandwich. It's something that you carry with you that reminds you that your family is looking after you, right? And it's a reassuring.
Well, and along those lines, Minister, is there anything formal that's going to be done to make wellness information for parents? Because I know in my time as Associate Minister of Wellness and as an educator and administrator, oftentimes we're teaching the parents through the kids. And I guess not that we're replacing the parents for a second, but we often reach the parents through the children.
Yes.
And without them on board, whatever happens at school might be undone, and vice versa. It's got to be a team effort. But if the parents come from a place where they're used to healthy eating, active living, then that's one thing. If that's not part of their history, they won't have it to pass along. So without being overly prescriptive, what will you be directing educators to do when it comes to assisting parents in the realm of wellness education?
Yeah, no, and thank you for that. And again, we know that learning by setting a good example is perhaps one of the best ways to model good eating habits, say, for example. And so by setting up these nutrition programs, it's not meant to be, replacing people's students and parents' choices around eating food and choosing food. We will have a best practice document that might come from the for 14 pilots, and we can work from it there. And you're right. I mean, we do reach in with everything we do into families, and we want that to be a partnership, so that we're not telling people what to feed their kids by any means. And I mean, on a personal level, I just that doesn't fit with the way I would run my family either. But we have to be conscious that everything that we do has an influence on back to individual families and then to the larger community too. So then, again, this is just not my idea, but in High Prairie for the what was the name of this supermarket chain there? I can't remember now. Yeah, Friesen's, the Friesen brothers, right? They're supplying and donating a lot of the food, and then setting up a section in the supermarket where the families can go and see that food being displayed, as featured in High Prairie Elementary or whatever. People can come along and then pick and the kids could say, yeah, let's get some more of those, right? And so I thought that was really cool.
So there's an example of a corporate group doing a good thing, and I'll tell you, in my time in wellness, we found some really great folks who were in it for the bench interest.
Oh, yeah, the Friesen
I'd
brothers are
encourage
really,
those-
really good, right?
Those
Yeah.
partnerships.
Yeah.
I know we're almost out of time for this segment. Minister, I don't want to convince you, nutrition is just one part of a healthy life. We'll get into the others in our next
Yeah,
segment.
sure, yeah,
My
let's look
apologies.
back.